Well, welcome everyone to today's Process Mining Academy session. Today we'll be focusing on how to get end-to-end visibility into processes that contain both ServiceNow process data and process data that's generated by applications outside of ServiceNow. So the ability to combine ServiceNow and external process data in a multidimensional map is something that we added in the Washington release. So today in the session, we'll go from importing that external data to creating the combined visualized process map. But of course, first we need to get through the logistics of the session. So the purpose of these sessions are to help us all get better educated on ServiceNow's in-platform process mining capabilities. We'll provide how-tos like today's session, some practical guidance and use cases, product updates, and just as a group exchange ideas and collaborate so we all continue to get better. How the sessions work? Well, we have a scheduled topic that we cover usually for the first 30 minutes. I think today might be a little bit shorter than that. Then we'll open it up for questions on the chosen topic for the session. Then we'll open up for questions above and beyond the topic, sort of like an office hours. And I mentioned office hours just so you know, we're starting up an official office hours. I believe the first one is scheduled for next week. That is an event that's on the community site as well. So if you haven't registered for that, go check that out. We'll be hosting these office hours monthly. The sessions get recorded and eventually posted on the community. And finally, feel free to post your questions in the Q&A session as I go through the content. I do my best to answer them here today, but if I can't, I usually follow up and post the answers on the process mining community, or in some cases, we actually use them as a future topic for one of these sessions. So I think most of you that are here today have actually realized that the registration is moved onto a Live On Now registration. But if you happen to be watching the recording and you want to register for future events, just go out to the community events page and register for the new invite. This is the slide that says, hey, anything I say and do here today can't be held against me in the court of law. It's also the slide that says, as part of these conversations, if I happen to make any forward-looking statements about things that might be coming in future releases, you should take them as forward-looking statements. Make no purchasing decisions based on them whatsoever, because things are always subject to change, and I'm assuming you've read the fine print. For those that I've not met before, my name is Dan Grady. I'm part of the process mining product team here at ServiceNow. What we'll be doing today is we'll do that quick little process mining 101 for the newcomers. Then we'll dive into the content. I got a couple of slides up front just to kind of highlight what's different and things you need to be aware of if you want to go through and link ServiceNow data and external process data into multidimensional map. And then we'll jump right into the demonstration. And like I said, we'll walk end to end through the process with a very small little data set and a simple small application that I created on the platform just for this purpose. We'll get your questions answered, and then we'll just wrap up with some additional resources, and we'll also touch on all of the knowledge sessions that are coming up in a couple of weeks for those that are attending that are focused on process mining. As always, we'll start with the quick process mining 101 for our newcomers. So with everything we do, there's a design and desired path in our minds for how it should work and how things should play out, whether it be planning an event like these Academy sessions or a workflow. And when you design things, you design for efficiency as well as completeness to provide the best experience possible for as many people as possible. Now, unfortunately, what we design isn't always what ends up happening in reality. The reality is not all the work is going to be flowing through the optimal path. And that's going to have a negative impact on both the experience people requesting services are having, as well as the people that are trying to deliver that service. The challenge is identifying what is actually happening within our processes and our workflows and then improving them isn't always easy. What process mining allows us to do is use the audit log data that's generated as records move through a given process to create a visual representation of what is actually happening within that process. And then with this new level of visibility, this is going to help us accelerate our ability to identify inefficiencies, non-conformant process activities, and improvement opportunities. Essentially, process mining gives us the ability to answer process questions that have historically been pretty challenging for most of us to answer. So where traditional analytics will allow us to answer a lot of the what questions about our processes, process mining helps us answer the why. So things like, where is the process getting stuck? Where is there any sort of unnecessary rework happening? Where are incidents, cases, anything really ping-ponging between different groups or teams? And where aren't we conforming to what we've actually designed? These are all things that have historically been difficult to answer and act upon, and now they're available to us in ServiceNow with just a couple of clicks. We like to say process mining is going to get you to the why behind all of your KPIs. And when we do this, right, it empowers everyone involved in the process to make more data-driven decisions about which improvements to make and which ones maybe we put on the back burner, right? There's always no shortage of opportunities to improve. You need data to help you prioritize which ones to tackle first, or which opportunities to tackle first. All right, today's topic. So if you've joined us for other sessions, you know one of our ServiceNow process mining goals is to provide end-to-end visibility into all your critical business processes. Sometimes those processes live in ServiceNow, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they start in ServiceNow and have some steps in another application and then come back to ServiceNow. Well, as of the Washington release, we have coverage for all three of these scenarios, and it's been a progression for us to get to this point. So in the Tokyo release, we made the leap from a single table process view to multi-process view by giving you the ability to link parent and child tables or reference tables when creating a process model. And that allowed us to get end-to-end visibility into processes that were solely contained and ran only inside of ServiceNow. So it's a really powerful capability for workflows like requests in the ServiceNow platform. If you think about where the bottlenecks are in your typical request process, you have the approval step, which usually lives at the requested item level, and then you have any sort of delays that live maybe in the fulfillment tasks themselves, right? And those live in or they're two different tables on the ServiceNow platform, right? Requested item and SC tasks. So multidimensional mining or maps give us the ability to visualize these things together to see exactly where in the request process are we leaking time or losing productivity. Another prime opportunity for these multidimensional maps would be an HR onboarding process where we have a parent onboarding lifecycle event and then a whole bunch of activity sets with subtasks and requests that kind of farm off of them or branch off of them. That's probably not farm, branch is the right word. And very often an onboarding process is going to have steps that involve other applications in addition to ServiceNow. So we needed to continue to enhance the solution and start to incorporate more process data beyond ServiceNow. And that's what we did in the Vancouver release. In Vancouver, we introduced the ability for customers to import external process data through an automation engine and integration hub, and then apply our in-platform process mining solution on top of that external data. So one example of that, it would be a hiring process. This happens to be data that we can pull from, let's say, a Smart Recruiters systems. We pull the audit log data from Smart Recruiters, pump it into ServiceNow, and apply process mining on top of that. Or maybe you've got a finance process that's living inside of SAP. Again, we can pull the data from SAP, pump it into ServiceNow, and apply our process mining to that. Now, well, this is a super interesting use case if you've not already seen it. Our Now on Now team here at ServiceNow recently posted a recording of how they used ERP Canvas, Flow Designer, and process mining together to get visibility into an internal finance process. And if you haven't checked out this recording yet, it's a good the whole is greater than the sum of its parts ServiceNow platform story. I highly encourage you to check it out. It's available on the community site. Just search out that ServiceNow process mining for SAP, and you'll find it. And then now in the Washington, D.C. release, we bring the two capabilities together, the ability to combine ServiceNow and external process data in a single multidimensional process map so we can get that end-to-end visibility into these hybrid processes that cross systems. All right, so I'm just going to run through a few more slides to highlight the important changes or differences from what you may have been doing from an external data and multidimensional map perspective individually in prior releases, and give you what you'll need to know if you want to create a map that involves both ServiceNow and external process data. And then we'll get into the instance and run through the process start to finish with a small sample data set that I created. Let's just start with the external data. So in order to mine external process data, we need to acquire that data from that external application. Very often, the data is in a form of a data extract, a CSV or an Excel file. But if you have some integration hub skills, you could go direct to that data source, like that SAP example I was mentioning a little bit earlier. We then have a step-by-step guided experience that puts the audit log data in the correct place on the ServiceNow platform and makes it available for process mining. Then once it's there, you just create your process mining project, and in minutes you have visibility into your process. And like I said, we're going to do that here today. The key piece of this process is that audit log data. There are three core pieces of information necessary for process mining. You need a case ID, some sort of unique identifier for the record. Could be a claim number, a patient ID, an employee ID, or a case number of some sort. Then you need an activity. Essentially, what the activity is the thing that is changing over time that we want to track. Usually this is some sort of status or state value, but as we often do for native ServiceNow workflows, perhaps you want to look at how things are moving between teams or groups. That would be your activity, or could be an activity for you. And then the last core value that we need is a timestamp for when that activity value is changed. If you can produce those three pieces of information from an external system, we can visualize your process and then highlight bottlenecks and inefficiencies with process mining. Now, to link external process data to internal process data, we need some sort of reference value to the record that we want to connect to in ServiceNow, an incident number, a case number, a request number, maybe. This is the main difference between what you've been doing and what you need to do if you want to link internal and external process data. Now, in addition to those core data points, you might want to augment the data set with some contextual information that we'll be able to use as part of your analysis. Things like categories, regions, types, vendors, etc. For those familiar with our process mining solution, these will be values that we'll use as breakdowns in the workspace once we mine the data. So once you have a file that looks like this, the rest of the process is pretty much a piece of cake. Are there other ways to format the data to include multiple activity values? Yeah, but that's like a topic for a whole nother session. But this is the key piece. If you can produce a file or a data set that looks like this, we're 80% of the way to where we need to be. Now, with your process event data in hand, you or somebody with the Process Mining Academy role will go through the process mining workspace to step through the process of loading up that data. You'll give your external data set a name. You'll then be given instructions on which fields we're creating for you by default and why, essentially what we just walked through in that last slide. Then you'll have the option to add those additional fields, whereas before we were primarily entering string fields. Now you have to make sure that you configure that reference field linkage to the internal table. Once you've configured the import table, you'll be directed to Integration Hub to handle the mapping and importing of your data into that import table that was just magically created for you. And once the data is loaded into the import table, the guided setup completes, and the process there's a process that formats the data on the platform so you can mine it like any other process that was native to ServiceNow. Now, this is the key step in that process, that what it will look like. Essentially, when you're adding your additional fields above and beyond the case, the activity, and the timestamp that we create for you to your import set table, you need to set up this reference link. So it's obviously handy to know which table and field you'll want to use as your reference before you start this process. Once the data is loaded up, and we're going to create our project, and we'll do this live, but I wanted to highlight just this one area here before we get into the live demonstration, more of as a reference point, right? You're likely going to be using your ServiceNow table as your parent. Then you'll choose to configure your child table. The first thing, and sometimes I forget to make sure that I do this myself, is you need to change the source of the data from table to external data, right? There's a specific flag. So when you're choosing which data you want to mine, you're going to have things like table, archive data, report source, and then one of those options is external data. Make sure you choose this external data option. I've driven myself crazy in the past looking for the table that I know I just loaded up and it's not there, and it's because I haven't chosen that source table. And so when you switch that, you get access to the right list of tables. Then you need to choose kind of whether it's going to be what relationship you want to use. And this, in 90% or 99.9% of the cases for external data, is going to be a child relationship that you're going to choose here. And then you need to choose the source or reference field from your parent table that you want to link to. And this is most likely going to be the unique identifier or the number ID for that field in the table. And then the one is basically the one that has the value that matches the reference column in the external data set that you loaded up. That's it. That's the magic, right? Once you have that configured and you add your activities and breakdowns just like you do for anything else, you mine your data and you'll have your visualized process that contains both ServiceNow and external data. So let's jump on into the instance and do it together live. Just so you can see real quick, here's my little data set that we're going to use from an external data perspective. We have our unique identifier field. We have our activities and the times that those activities are changing. We have our related tasks. So this is going to be my field that I'm going to reference to. And then I have my just additional categorical field of vendor. So that's the data we're going to load up. I kept it small so the load time would be super fast. When we go through the process, we can get it all done today. So step one, let's go to our external data integration. We're in the process mining workspace. If you've not done this before, you come here, you go to process mining workspace. If you have enabled the external data plugin, you'll have this option to choose external data sets. And we're going to create an external data set. And we'll call this Academy external data set. And we'll say create data set. It just tells me that when we did that, it created an import set table for me that has the case ID, our event values, and our timestamps. And then next we have to choose the additional fields that we have to add. Well, one will be that vendor field. And then we need to add that reference field, right? That one that had the reference to the numbers in the application on the platform. I'll choose reference here. And we'll call this reference to Academy task. We'll select our reference table. That's going to be this little Academy app that I built for purposes of this exercise. And the reference field in there we're going to use is the number field. And that's going to match what I have in my external data set. Great. Now we'll create that import table. All right, we give you here's the import table. It's always good to copy this value because this is what we're going to use when we go over here to Integration Hub. So we're going to use Integration Hub to populate this import set table. So we'll proceed to Integration Hub for me. We'll create a new integration. This is going to be called Academy External Data. Set load Academy. And we'll hit save and continue. You select your source type. As I mentioned earlier, most of the time, you're probably going to be loading up a CSV or an Excel file, but you do have these other connections available, other spokes available to you. So if you've got some skills and you want to get a little bit fancier, you can totally do it that way as well. I've got my little external audit data file. It interrogates that. It finds those 5 fields that were inside of there for me. Great. And then we map it to our target. So we'll come here, we'll say add a table. This is where we'll paste in that little table that we just copied from the last step. We'll hit save. And then we have to map our fields. So we can use this auto map button to start the process for us. It mapped vendor for me. But then I'm going to take my, let's say, unique identifier field and map that to the case ID. I'm going to take my activity value and map it to the event value. I'm going to take that timestamp and map it to the timestamp field. And then here's my related task. And I'm going to map that to the reference field here. And we'll hit save. So we've got our mapping. And then we just need to run that import. So we'll come here to scheduled imports. We'll say run import. Only 5 or I think 25 records. So this should be completed and processed pretty quickly for us. Awesome. Our external data is now loaded up into our import set. If we come back over here, it just says, let me know when your import is complete. In this case, it is. We'll say next. Great. We could edit the data set, check it out. I'm not going to do that here today. We'll hit confirm. And then it needs to create the case record. So what we loaded up is we loaded up the audit logs, right? The individual changes on these records, but we need like a main primary case table that maps to those audit logs. So it's going to take these 25 audit log records. look at those unique identifiers, and ultimately in our case here, it's going to create a table with 5 records in it, right? And that's this one here, our 5 records. Now, right from here, if we were just doing external, like a process map on an external data set, we could click this create project button. But in our case, we're going to be now linking this external data set to an internal data set. And the internal data set is going to be our parent project. So we're just going to come back here and we're going to create a new project from the start. For those who have not seen the Washington release before, one of the enhancements that we made in Washington is we added a guided setup experience for project creation. So for those of you that have not seen this yet, you're probably expected when I hit create project, us to go to the traditional list and form view. We've augmented that now with this new guided setup. So I hope you enjoyed this new guided setup as I walk you through, many of you through it for the first time. So what we'll do is we'll call this Academy External Data Set Project. Don't need to give it a short description. We'll choose our table, and it's going to be our little Academy, Process Mining Academy app that I've got. It's only like 15 records in it. We'll say create project. And this will walk us through the process of next. What we have to do is set up our activities, definitions, and our breakdown. So here on the left-hand side, I don't really need any filter conditions for this. I only got 15 records in this Academy application. I'm going to set my activity for it. We'll come here, we'll say new. It's going to be state. Great. And I have to hit save down here. Then we'll add breakdowns. I'm only going to add 1 breakdown for this parent table here, and it'll be category. Great. I'll hit save. And now what we'll do is I'll add our child table, right? We'll link that external data set to this internal data set. So this is the piece that I usually forget, but here's where you choose your source. So table, a report source is if you have saved a report that's got lots of filter conditions. External data is what we're going to do here. And in Washington, we also added the ability to mine archive data if you're an organization that archives your data. So we're going to choose external data. I need to find my external data set. Here's my Academy external data set that we just created through that process. So we'll pick that. The parent table is going to be my Process Mining Academy app. The relationship is going to be these records are going to be children of this Process Mining Academy app. And what's the source field? Well, it's that reference to the Academy task that I want to link together. And we'll hit save. Now, I usually forget to do this, but I'm not. I'm going to come to my external data set, and I'm going to come here, and I want to make sure that I have activities set for this external data set as well. So we'll come here. We'll find our fields. Here's those fields that were in that external data set, my activity and my vendor and the reference to the Academy task. I'm going to choose activity 1. I'll make that a state value and hit save. We'll choose a breakdown and we'll make it that vendor field that was in that external data set. And we'll hit save. And now we're pretty much done. We'll move on to this improvement opportunities. We don't have any finding definitions configured for these external data sets, so we're just going to breeze through this process. And at this point, we're ready to mine. So it'll give us this ability to review everything that we set up. Here's our parent, our child table, great. And we'll hit mine project. We can choose sample mine. There's a small amount of data in here. It's way less than that 3,600 record limit of the sample mine. And what's going to happen now? It's going to go out, harvest the relevant audit log data, both from the internal and the external. Take that data, pass it off to the machine learning infrastructure to do all the heavy duty number crunching, spit that back in, and we'll go view it in the workspace. And now what we'll see, I'll just move this to the left and to the right here. And if I expand this out to be a little bit larger, 100% maybe, or maybe let's just make it 75. I'll expand this, and what we'll see is now we've got that linkage between our internal app, my little Process Mining Academy app, which is native to the ServiceNow platform, and then this external data set that we loaded up from that Excel file. And we've got a linkage between the two, and we can start to see when things go to the external processing step, there's the linkage, the 5 records, that's when it happened. We can actually then see all the bottlenecks in this process, and then when this stuff came back to the parent table that still lives in ServiceNow. That's it. That's how it works. That's how you kind of walk through the process of linking together internal ServiceNow process data, external ServiceNow process data, put them into a single combined multidimensional map. And we did all of that in maybe 10 or 15 minutes here. So pretty powerful capability. Like I mentioned earlier, there's many use cases for this. The one that we've seen has most often for is from an HR onboarding perspective, where you've got that high level onboarding case and then a whole bunch of potential subtasks that may involve external systems. You want to start linking those together into a single map. Let's come back to the slides and we'll just pause. I'll open it up for questions. If you have questions, throw them into the Q&A portion of this. If anything, or the chat, I'm going to be monitoring both. If you have any questions, now is the time to get them into that Q&A. I don't see anything there right now, so I'll come back and check again in a minute or two. Just some other logistical items. So we just walked through kind of the steps necessary to link external data, internal data in a multidimensional process map. There are other Academy sessions out there, one that specifically focuses on process mining for external data. So if you want to learn a little bit more about process mining for external data, go check out that Process Mining Academy session. If you want to learn a little bit more about multidimensional process maps and how to do different types of analysis with those, there's a whole session focused on just multidimensional process maps. So check out those two sessions if you want to dive deeper into any one of these two areas. I highly recommend both of them if you're going to be doing something that involves linking both internal and external data. Above and beyond this, there are other opportunities to learn more about ServiceNow's process mining solution. We do have a Now Learning course out there on the site. It's called Process Mining Essentials. A little bit dated at this point. We're in the process of updating it, but it is a good foundational course for you to take on the Now Learning site. There is a great Now on Now white paper that walks through how we've structured our process mining program here at ServiceNow and 5 of the initial use cases and processes that we attacked with process mining and some of our initial findings. Most of you probably know, because you found this session, that there is a community forum just focused on process mining or product hub. So lots of useful information out there, lots of content there. One of them is these Process Mining Academy sessions. This happens to be our 25th Process Mining Academy session. All the other prior 24 are recorded and posted to this Process Mining Academy site. So there's deep dives into different areas like those two we just focused on. There's even a deep dive into things like the histogram, if you wanted to learn more about the histogram or root cause analysis, or there's a process mining for HR session out there. We also have something we call the use case series. The use case series is a collection of short little 5-minute videos that walk you through common use cases like how to use process mining to do SLA breach analysis, how to use process mining to do multi-hop analysis, how to use process mining to compare before and after a process change to see if there's any adverse effects. So there's about 10 of those little recordings out there just to help you kind of get inspired about what use cases you might want to use process mining for, and actually walks you through how to configure the projects and do the analysis itself. And then lastly, there's a live on now session that's focused on getting started with in-platform process mining. It walks you through all the steps of turning on the plugins and configuring your first project or two. The Academy sessions out there, also Academy session number 1 and Academy session number 2, also have videos that are very good foundational videos to walk you through those types of initial project creation steps. I'll go back and I'll check the Q&A to see if there's any questions that have come in. So somebody's asking, like, how many customers have log files or event files per process available besides that SAP example? I've seen lots of different examples. I've gotten data files from Salesforce. Salesforce doesn't have their own native process mining solution, so people are looking to do step analysis. They'll extract those types of files from Salesforce. And the Smart Recruiters one is that we used internally here is one that we used. So I've seen, I think Jira was another one in which somebody pulled some data out of Jira and sent it on over, or was using that for analysis. So I've seen a number of different examples. Sometimes it's a custom application. I actually had one customer that had a homegrown underwriting system that they produced an extract for us to mine and visualize. So lots of different examples. I'm always interested to learn more. So for those of you that are watching this recording or stumble upon it, if you've got examples of external data that you're interested in mining, please post to the community. We're always looking to learn interesting use cases where we could apply this solution. The question about which course do I recommend for linking to internal ServiceNow tables? For that one, I recommend that you use this one here, this Process Mining Academy number 21. Multidimensional process maps. That'll walk through the creation of a multidimensional process map of two in ServiceNow tables internally. That's the best one for that. And then also you could look at the use case series for analyzing approval bottlenecks. That also walks you through creating a multidimensional process map for both the requested item and the SE task table. So those are two good options to check out. Great. Anyone else have any additional questions that they want to get in before we wrap up? As you're thinking of other questions that you may want to ask, I'll just remind you that there is no Process Mining Academy in May. We're taking a little break for knowledge, but there is a ton of process mining sessions that are being run at Knowledge itself. So there's one that we're running. It's basically an introduction to process mining called Enable Fast Data-Driven Improvements with In-Platform Process Mining. That's going to be myself with my colleague and partner, Jeroen van Gassel. We'll do kind of a little intro. We'll also cover some roadmap stuff in that session on Wednesday. We have a session that called Better Together. So we'll walk through kind of the combination of performance analytics or platform analytics and process mining. In fact, that session, we had one scheduled for Tuesday. It's sold out already, and they added an additional session, so that's a topic that interests you. Highly recommend you get yourself and you're heading to Knowledge sign up for that one because it is filling up fast. We have another session that we'll be running through just some of the common use cases, some of the things that are in that use case series there. And then there's a couple of sessions focused specifically on process mining for customer service management, and another couple of sessions focused on process mining specifically for HRSD. And then our Now on Now team is also running a session on process mining and how to get started with it. So no shortage of opportunities to learn more about process mining at Knowledge if you happen to be attending. And if you are attending, I would love it if you came to one of these sessions, but I would also love it if you stopped by our pod or booth, whatever you call it, that's going to be in the platform pavilion area. I mean, would love to meet some of you in person that have been joining on a regular basis. Always good to put a face with a name. So please seek us out if you happen to be there, sign up for the sessions or recommend the sessions to a friend. All right, last chance for romance. Anybody else have any additional questions that you want to get in before we turn into a pumpkin here today? If not, just want to thank you all for your time and happy mining, everyone.